When it comes to sim racing performance, the steering wheel is arguably the least important, at least when compared to your wheelbase and pedals. You can perform just as well on a $250 wheel compared to one that costs 5 or even 10 times that. So what justifies these prices? In the first of my dedicated steering wheel review videos, I'll explore that question, start a leaderboard that includes all the wheels I've owned and tested, and do a deep dive on today's feature wheel, the Ascher F64. And at the end of the video, we'll see where the Ascher F64 ends up. Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. This is the first episode of a brand new series where we'll be looking more closely at sim racing steering wheels. Whether you're just starting out or an experienced sim racer looking for your next upgrade, we'll be breaking down everything you need to know. In each video, I will go through 4 categories. The first one will be the design and the build quality. The second one will be the features and functionality. The third one will be the ergonomics and grip, which I will try in the sim. And the last one will be the value. And at the end of each review, I'll score each wheel and rank them on the leaderboard so you can see how they compare with each other. So if you're in the market for a new steering wheel, or if you're just curious about what makes a specific wheel stand out, you're definitely in the right place. And we're putting the bar high for this first video, as today we are reviewing the F64 V3 from Ascher Racing. This V3 version was released in 2022 and was an upgrade from their initial F64, but it is still considered top-notch today. So let's see if it lives up to the hype. This is a review unit that Ascher Racing sent to me for review purposes, and I will send it back to them after this video, unfortunately. So huge thanks to Ascher Racing for letting me try out the F64. This steering wheel comes in 2 versions, the wireless and the USB. Because I'm gonna install this on my Simucube 2 Pro, I'm able to use the wireless version, but if you have any other wheelbase, it will be the USB version. So as I mentioned earlier, the first category is the design and the build quality. So let's take a look at the materials. One thing that I noticed right off the bat when I opened the box of this steering wheel is the build quality. It's apparent instantly, you can feel it, you can see it. It has a good weight to it, but it's not too heavy either. But you can tell that it's something that's gonna be really strong and durable. This wheel is designed out of automotive aluminum, and we have a brushed front plate finish, which I think looks pretty awesome. When it comes to the rim, it is wrapped in a high grip elastomer, which is designed for better handling and for really high grip to make sure that your hands don't get slippery on the steering wheel when you're driving. I've actually never owned a steering wheel before that has this kind of material on the rims, and it's probably not going to be my favorite if I'm completely honest, just because I am 100% an Alcantara lover, and this is absolutely a personal preference, but everything else kind of falls short to me. Even though this, I think, is going to be insane for the grip because it is quite sticky actually, and it has one downside to it. It gets kind of dirty quickly because you can see a little bit of dust already on it. I'm gonna zoom so you guys can see better. The grips can gather dust pretty quickly just from sitting out, but you can bring it back to new again with a quick wipe down. But other than that, I can't wait to see in the sim how it performs because I think it's going to be amazing for the grip. When it comes to the paddle shifters, they are CNC machined and made out of automotive aluminum like the rest of the steering wheel. They feel really rigid and solid, and they have a nice satisfying click to them. I really like it, but we'll get back to it later in the video when we try it out in the simulator. It also comes with the Motorsport clutch, which is actually one of the big upgrades that they've made between the previous version of this wheel and the V3. When it comes to the design of this steering wheel, I think the combination of the different materials, the front plate finish and the engravements, I think it looks really good and it gives it a very premium feel. It's hard to find fault with the build quality and materials of the F64. You're not getting anything fancy such as carbon fiber that you will find on other wheels, but the only plastic I could find is on the 14 push buttons. Everything else is aluminum, and you can feel a high level of craftsmanship and durability from the first time you pick it up. So now let's move on to the second category, the features and the functionality, the buttons and switches. And this is one of the key features of this steering wheel and what gives it its name, because it has no less than 64 inputs. You have 14 push buttons, 7 on each side, and the 2 red ones up here are embedded. It's probably useful for something that you really don't want to activate unless you really mean it, such as the pit limiter. You also have 2 encoders up here with push button functionality. There are 2 7-way switches, also known as funky switches, which are especially useful for menu navigation. New on the V3, auto thumb encoders. The resistance on each click feels great. Finally, you get 2 rotary switches with 12 positions. There's a beautiful aluminum finish on everything other than the 14 push buttons. Now the thing with this wireless version is that if we look at the back of the steering wheel, you can see those switches here that are for all of these encoders, and that allows you to have double the input for each of the buttons as well. These red encoders turn and you can push them. By activating the switch, you can hold down the encoder and turn, giving it an entirely new function. For the rotary switches, you would typically only be able to dedicate one dial for one specific setting, such as traction control. But by activating the switch on the back, you can use this one dial to adjust up to 12 settings. That is insane. So let's say I have the one position set for traction control adjustment. I would then use the thumb encoder right here to adjust the actual TC setting. Then position 2 could be used to adjust ABS, position 3 to adjust engine map, and so on. These switches are only on the wireless version, but you can still use this functionality via Ascher's software. The wireless version is charged via USB Type-C and can go from empty to full in 6 hours. A full charge offers 800 hours of use. When it comes to customization, Ascher Racing has done a great job in giving you options. All of the buttons are fully swappable, and the steering wheel also comes with 50 button labels and 72 encoders labels, so you're free to do whatever you want with the customizations of all of the inputs. Ascher also provides additional magnets and spacers for the paddle shifters, so you can decide which force works for you. So as you can see, you are pretty much free to make this wheel your own and customize it as much as you want. One thing that you may notice is that this steering wheel doesn't come with any display or LED lights of any kind. It is a very simple design, but it is effective. Ascher is definitely focusing on quality and performance. There is no fluff. And again, I think this is a question of preference. Some people like to have the display on the steering wheel, others prefer something simple like this. I think you can easily add a dash on your wheelbase, which will replace, a display on your steering wheel. I think this is probably my preference. I find it sometimes hard to read on the display on the steering wheel because it's a little bit too low. Again, it depends on what you're driving, it depends on your personal preference, and I don't think it's really taking anything away from this steering wheel. I still can't get over the dual functionality of those encoders and rotary switches. It's innovations like this that make the F64 stand out. The sheer number of inputs is more than you could ever ask for, and the tactility of all the buttons and switches is perfect. It's especially ideal for VR users who won't be able to look at the wheel and rely on feel. It would have been nice to have at least some LED shift lights. If you're looking for a wheel that can light up like a Christmas tree or that has built-in display, the F64 is not for you. Let's talk about the installation. As I mentioned, this is the wireless version of the wheel because it will go on my Simucube 2 Pro, and it came with the adapter for my wheelbase and a spacer that allows the steering wheel not to be too close from the wheelbase when I mount it on it. The F64 uses the common 6x70mm bolt pattern. The spacer is optional, but you'll probably find you need it for the paddles to clear your wheelbase. Here's the Simucube QR. All the hardware is provided as well as instructions, so even if you've never done this before, you'll find it very easy. So it's really nothing to worry about. It's very straightforward and plug and play, and I'm now going to be able to finally jump into the sim and give this thing a proper try. Okay, so I've been driving for a few laps now, and the first thing that I noticed is the level of grip. It's pretty insane. This elastomer material that they're using is super sticky. It's definitely the highest level of grip that I've ever seen on the steering wheel. It's super nice, but it's almost too sticky for my skin. Maybe it's gonna be better with gloves for this steering wheel. I usually like to drive without gloves just because I think it's I don't know, I feel more of the road and everything, and because I usually drive with Alcantara steering wheel, it's really comfortable and you don't get really sticky hands or you don't really get too sweaty, which is nice. But I think with this, the gloves are definitely probably a need. So I'm gonna show you the difference between this level of grip and what you would get on a different type of wheel. So if we look at the Moza KS steering wheel, so you can look at the grip here and you can see, even just looking at it, you can see how shiny this one is, and it's super slippery. So when you're kind of holding it in your hand, you can see how like it doesn't grip, like your skin is just flowing on it. While this one, like I can barely like move my hand on it. It's so sticky. You really feel it when you're driving. So this one is actually like super nice, but you don't get a good level of grip because once you're moving around, your hand is not really held onto the steering wheel. While here, you really have a good grip. So I'm gonna pull my gloves and see if it helps. I still have the same level of grip. It's still my hands, I really have to use strength to move my hand around, which is super nice. But now I don't have that kind of weird contact between the sticky elastomer and my hands, which is a lot better. So now the next things are the paddle shifters. They're very loud, but when you're driving and when you have the sound of the game on, I think it's actually quite satisfying and I'm not really bothered by it. Maybe only if you have, you know, a bedroom next or something like that, people might get upset, but otherwise they feel really nice and they feel strong without being too hard to pull. So now let's talk about the size of this steering wheel. It is 285 millimeters of diameter, which I think is very appropriate. It's not too big, it's not too small. I'm actually used to the Fanatec Formula wheel, which is 270 millimeters, so it's even smaller, which I like a lot because I have smaller hands. So it's easier for me to reach the buttons and the paddle shifters. And actually on this steering wheel, on the F64, I think the paddle shifters are the perfect distance. I don't have to stretch my hands or my fingers too much to reach them. And I'll show you just right now in a second the difference between this steering wheel and the Moza. This steering wheel, the paddle shifters are so far. You can see how much, if I really hold on to the steering wheel, how much I have to stretch my fingers to reach it. It's almost like I can't get there. So my hands tend to get a lot more tired when I'm driving on this wheel. I do like it a lot, and you can see also how different the grip is on this one. It's definitely a completely different style. It's not bad, but I have to say that the Ascher Racing, it has just the perfect position for your hands and it's so comfortable and you can really race for a long time without feeling any discomfort. The last thing that I think is important to discuss is the placement of the buttons. You don't want to have to really remove your hands from the steering wheel, from your driving position when you're pushing those buttons, of course. Most of them, I think it's pretty well done. I mean, I can reach all the ones on the top fairly easily. The funky switches are really easy. Everything here is really easy to get to. The only maybe downside or the only thing that they could have done differently are the thumb encoders. You can see when I'm holding the wheel here, it's kind of hard to get to them. It's not too bad, but you do have to move your hand quite a bit to reach them. You could potentially get them with your pinky in the back of the steering wheel, but it's not really practical. I think they didn't really have a choice because there's not enough room at the top here, so there is a lot of the steering wheels that are made this way, and I think it's okay. But that's really the only thing. Anything else, I think is really well thought. The F64 is the grippiest wheel I've tested so far. It's not the most pleasing feeling on the skin, however, so I would say it's more adapted towards those who will be using gloves. The paddle shifters are ideally placed and hand placement around the grips is absolutely perfect. So now to the fourth and last category for this video, the value. At a price of 1100 €, this thing is definitely not cheap. And I'm gonna be honest, at first glance, you probably don't think that this is worth the price, and I was kind of skeptic as well. And I have to say, when you look at all the details, when you look at the build quality, when you look at the optionality that you get with this steering wheel, and honestly, the comfort when you're driving, everything is just perfect. Only thing, as I mentioned at the very beginning of the video, was in terms of this material. It kind of changed my mind after driving it. I have to say the level of grip is insane. It's super comfortable, and I can definitely see myself drive with this steering wheel for a long time without feeling any kind of pain or my hands getting tired. I really like it, and the only downside is the stickiness that makes it a little bit dirty. That is not a big deal, and that is definitely not something that for me is reducing the value that you're getting with this steering wheel. So again, all these little things just add up and you really feel like you have something premium, and that's what justifies the cost of this steering wheel. And of course, because of the build quality, you know that this is something that's going to be durable, that you're going to be able to keep for a very long time, and the fact that you can customize it exactly like you want, I think this is really a good investment, because this is not something that you will want to change anytime soon. With the F64, you're paying over $1,100 for peace of mind in its durability, longevity, and being future-proof. All critical factors for any serious sim racer. The build quality, precision, and customization options means this wheel will stay relevant for years, and unless you're looking for something highly specialized, you probably won't need to upgrade for a long time. And with scores like that, the Ascher F64 V3 earns the top spot in my Formula Wheel leaderboard, overtaking the Moza FSR. So let's summarize what are the pros and the cons of this steering wheel. And we'll start with the pros. The build quality is amazing. You get tons of programmable inputs and a lot of customization options. It is comfortable, the ergonomics are great, and the level of grip is amazing. And of course, in my case, the wireless option is a plus with the Simucube 2 Pro. When it comes to the cons, I just mentioned the price of this thing. This is not for everybody, of course, but you get value for your money for sure. The second thing is the fact that you do not get any kind of display or lights or anything on the steering wheel. And lastly are the sticky grips. But again, as I mentioned, not that big of a deal. So final thoughts on the F64 from Ascher Racing. I was really impressed with this steering wheel. I honestly didn't know what to expect, and I was pleasantly surprised. I wasn't sure what the difference would be from the steering wheel that I'm using all the time. I wasn't sure that I would be able to feel the difference, but after testing it out, I can say that definitely you know why the price is different, you know why it is made specifically for very serious sim racers. I think this is comparable to when I got my Simucube active pedals and the Simucube Wheelbase. Of course, those are not products that you need really in sim racing. It's not a necessity, but once you have them, it's almost impossible to go back because they're just so good, they just feel so nice, and it is what really makes it stand out from the competition. So this is going to be it for today's video. I hope this review helps you decide if the Ascher Racing F64 is the right wheel for you. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to ask me in the comments below. If you enjoyed watching, please give this video a like and consider subscribing to the channel for more sim racing content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.